Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look into Ryan Coogler's new film, Sinners. We've got a couple of perspectives here from Jeremy Jahns and IGN on YouTube.
Right.
And our mission really is to kind of unpack this movie, see what it's all about, figure out if it's something, you might want to sink your teeth into.
Good pun. And it's interesting, both sources, they jump right on the pacing. They say it's not exactly racing out of the gate.
Yeah, Jahns called it a slow burn, didn't he? Focused on characters before the vampire stuff really hits.
Exactly. And IGN pretty much backs that up. They mention, the first 40 minutes or so are really about setting up 1932, the characters.
Huh?
Then the supernatural angle starts to creep in.
And that setup involves Michael B. Jordan playing twins, Smoke and Stack. In Chicago, mob ties. Then opening a juke joint down in Mississippi.
Yeah, and Mississippi seems to be where things take a turn, where the vampires show up.
Okay, so let's dig into that character focus first, because it sounds like both reviewers thought that was pretty crucial.
It definitely seems that way, especially for making that first half work, Before the big genre shift happens, they both stress how important the performances are.
Right, and Jahns was apparently really impressed with Jordan handling the twin roles, making them distinct, Smoke more grounded, Stack more eccentric.
Yeah, but not over the top. He felt Jordan found a nuance there.
That's tough to do.
For sure. IGN liked Jordan's charisma too, but also pointed out the little differences in how he played them, the mannerism.
Out in the costumes. IGN mentioned Ruthie Carter's work, blue for Smoke, red for Stack, a visual shorthand.
Yeah, a neat touch. Helps the audience track who's who.
And it wasn't just Jordan, right? Sounds like the supporting actors made an impact, too. Haley Steinfeld, Delroy Lindo.
Wee Musaku as Annie. Yeah, both reviews called them compelling and hinted they have this shared past with the twins that adds, another layer.
Okay.
And, something that jumped out at me, Jahns singled out Miles Ken, playing Sammy. Yeah, called him sort of the heart and soul of the film, which is pretty wild because Jahns mentioned this might even be, his first acting gig.
Wow, really? That's high praise for a newcomer.
I thought so, too. Says a lot about that performance, I guess.
Definitely. Okay, so we've established it's character-heavy at the start, not immediate vampire action. How does this genre of blending actually feel? What's the tone like?
Well, it seems quite deliberate. It starts feeling like a crime drama, maybe a period piece, character study.
Yeah.
Then the horror elements weave in. It's not like, bam, vampires from minute one.
Jahns brought up From Dusk Till Dawn.
He did, yeah, but said Sinners is way more gradual with the reveal. He even mentioned Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, the whole gotta be invited in idea for the vampires. So maybe a slightly different rule set.
Okay, interesting.
And IGN called it a rug-pulling genre shift, which sounds kind of jarring, but they seem to think it worked.
Because you're invested in the people first.
Exactly. Makes the horror hit harder, maybe. But yeah, disorienting but exciting was how they put it.
So manage expectations if you're going in just wanting fangs and blood from the get-go.
Right. That slow burn thing seems key. Patience required.
Okay, so when the vampires do arrive, what are they like? What's the vibe?
IGN paints them as pretty creepy, bloodthirsty, but also seductive. There's an appeal to joining them.
Seductive.
Yeah.
Interesting. And Jahns had that weird comment about their drool.
Oh, yeah. The hair gel from There's Something About Mary. He wondered if it was a deliberate choice, maybe tying into that seductive but kind of gross aspect. Who knows?
A memorable image, anyway.
For sure.
Yeah.
But maybe more thematically important, IGN mentioned this hive mind thing and how these vampires seem to accept anyone, regardless of skin color, which, stands out against the Jim Crow South setting.
Oh, okay. That's a stark contrast to the human world in the film.
Definitely. Creates a tension there, thematically.
Right. Let's shift to something else both reviews really hammered home. The music.
Oh, absolutely. Huge element, apparently. Jahns basically said music is a pillar of the film.
A pillar. Wow.
Yeah, take it out and the whole movie changes. He was really keen on getting the soundtrack.
And IGN dug into that, too. Mentioning the blues of the juke joint.
How it connects people, different generations. But they also mentioned Irish folk tunes linked to the main vampire, so it's not just one style.
A mix.
Yeah, and IGN really hyped up one specific juke joint scene, called it a tour de force centerpiece.
Really?
Yeah, apparently there's this amazing tracking shot, really captures the music's energy. They did clarify, though, it's more musical adjacent than a full musical.
Gotcha. So the music's doing heavy lifting narratively and emotionally.
Seems like it. Deeply woven in.
Which brings us to, the deeper stuff. What about allegories? themes? What's going on beneath the surface?
Jahns definitely picked up on allegorical vibes. He thought about race initially, but then kind of wondered if it was more complex, maybe tied into the vampire lore itself. He sort of listed the usual suspects for modern allegories, racism, girl power, even Trump, but gave Coogler credit for being more subtle than that usually.
Right. Coogler often is.
Yeah.
And IGN. Were they more direct?
Yeah, they explicitly brought up the Jim Crow setting, said the film explores racism, senseless human conflict, and then contrast that with the vampires being, well, more inclusive.
That contrast again.
Exactly. Jahns also kind of circled back, suggesting it could be about lots of things at once. Music, racism, cultural appropriation, and just being a cool vampire movie.
So potentially juggling quite a few ideas.
Seems that way. Maybe how they all interact with the vampire mythology is the key.
Sounds like plenty to chew on after the credits roll. Speaking of credits, how does it end? What were the final impressions?
Jahns had an interesting phrase for it, a Return of the King ending.
Meaning?
Multiple endings, basically. Several points where it feels like it could wrap up, but it keeps going, satisfyingly. And he really stressed watching the mid-credit scene.
Oh, right. Those are important sometimes.
He said it's not just a snippet, it's a full scene. The real ending, he implied.
Good tip.
Mm-hmm.
And IGN's take on the conclusion.
They felt the initial ending might feel a bit questionable at first, but that it ultimately becomes incredibly stirring, emotional, resonant, a thoughtful, almost melancholic use of vampire lore, was how they put it.
So, despite maybe some ambiguity, it lands emotionally for them?
Yeah, sounds like it. And overall, both seemed pretty positive.
Thumbs up from both.
Pretty much. Jug called it clever, cool, interesting, well done, liked the mix of character depth and vampire stuff.
And IGN?
They said Coogler nails it with his first horror film, called the story personal, heartfelt, emotional, also sexy and bloody, praised Jordan again, the music again. They even suggested Coogler should do more horror.
High praise indeed. Okay, so summing it up for listeners, Sinners sounds like it's definitely not just another vampire movie.
No, seems much more layered. It's a period piece, character-driven. Then it becomes this unique vampire story. Strong acting, interesting genre blend, major role for music, and these underlying themes bubbling up.
And both our sources, Jahns and IGN, found it original, engaging, well-crafted, worth seeing.
That's the clear message, yeah.
All right, so that leaves us with a final thought to ponder. Considering this film blends history, social issues, and the supernatural, what might Sinners really be saying about, well, belonging? Is that desire for connection, whether in a flawed human world or a monstrous, maybe more accepting collective, is that pull stronger than our fear of the unknown, no matter what form that belonging takes?
That's a deep one to chew on.